Hola everyone, it's Edith. You can call me Edith or Edith, and this is Cultura Convos. I am hosting this podcast and creating this space so that we can share stories and reflections of identidad y cultura, and not just my own personal reflections and solo episodes, also bring in guests so that we can hear each other's stories and really focus on writing and rewriting our narratives from a place of strength, really focusing on embracing our cultura and at the same time understanding that we're not defined by just one thing, right? So I'm excited for this journey. I welcome you in. And this episode is really, really exciting because I'm talking to my first guest where we talk about relationships, healing, spirituality, a little bit of motherhood. So I look forward to hearing what you enjoyed, what spoke to you, what you're reflecting on. So tune in and thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you for being my first guest because I'm like, we're you're like watching me in the moment in my
Yeah,
learning.
it's
So,
an honor to be here and to
um,
also be invited by you. Thank you for thinking of me.
yeah. So, okay, Diana, thank you so much for accepting to be a guest in Cultura Combos. I'm really, really excited to have you here. And I think about why I thought about inviting you. And really, it's for a few reasons. One, I thought about how we met in Latinos for Education, right? So we both lived in
Yeah,
Boston for some time
yeah.
and we were part of this fellowship. And I feel like you were one of those, well, I witnessed you being one of those people that every time you said something or often when you shared something, I'm like, wow, this girl really makes me think. Or and Latinos for Education was a space where we talked a lot about our cultura, race. We reflected our own identity and really like
Yeah.
talking about embracing that and what that means for us. So, one, I thought about that, and we've only really been in person with each other once, which is
Right.
crazy, huh? It feels like
Yeah.
we've kind of been
Known each
together more
other.
times. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then now we reconnected because we both have little ones. And I feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
through our conversations, it's almost like, oh my gosh, yeah, you are that person. You continue to just the way you speak. I feel like I can tell you've done a lot of internal work because I feel like I can see that with multiple of my friends. I'm like, girl, who's your therapist? Or like, who are you talking to? Because the way you're speaking just lets me know that you've done that, you're on that journey basically,
Yeah.
whatever that means, because I think it's different for different people. So I was like, you know what, I would love to have you because it's almost like this will be an extension of some of those conversations that we have that make me think, so I know that it will make other people think and reflect and connect.
Yeah.
So that's really where it stemmed from. And then the last thing I'll say is that when I Googled you. So I was like, okay, let me Google Diana so that I can just learn more about you without asking you. Cause you're busy too. So I was like, let me go
Yeah.
on LinkedIn at least to learn more about you because you have your friends, but we don't always sit and really unpack and know your story. So that's what I'm excited
Right.
about too with Cultura Combos, that it'll allow me to actually even learn from my own friends and get to know the story of my own friends on a deeper level. And then obviously eventually more and more people. So I say that to say, so I went on LinkedIn, and obviously LinkedIn is very like your career and where you worked.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I could see us talking about multiple things. One of the things could be maybe your journey. I'm always interested in like people's journey through higher ed because I know mine was
Yeah.
very interesting and it had a lot of pivots and turns. So I thought about like that. And because you work in the DEI space, I'm like, maybe you could talk about that. And your response was like, well, some of my biggest accomplishments, people tend to think, look at my schooling. What was your undergrad?
It was a small private liberal arts Pomona College.
Yeah, Pomona College. And then your grad school, that's when you went to Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then now working in the DEI space, you're like, sometimes people take those things as my accomplishments. Actually,
Yeah.
my biggest accomplishment is my daughter and my husband, or two of them,
Yeah.
because, and you could talk a little bit more. So I want to start there, because I feel like when you said that, it's
Mm.
like, wow, this is the point of this space, that it could be so easy for us to like look at the degrees and where you work, and that's where we start with our identity. And it's like, nah, girl, actually, like, those two things to society might be like an accomplishment, which they are, but for
Yeah.
me, my two accomplishments and how I'm defining that are your. So can you start there? Like, tell me a little bit more what you were thinking when you said that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And first, I'll just say, Edith, our friendship was the best thing that happened that came out of Latinos for Education. Like, I'm so glad I did it because you and I connected and stayed in touch. And honestly, we've only seen each other not only just once, but we've only talked on the phone once. Our entire our entire friendship has literally been voice chat memos like the whole time,
That's
and
true.
it's been amazing to just cultivate this friendship and intercambio that we have with one another, the wisdom that you're seeking, that I'm gaining, that we're sharing, the shared journey of both being mamas Latinas, children of immigrants, all of those things. And so when you asked me about, let's start with your trajectory into higher education, your career, your education. I'm like, yeah, I can talk about that a ton. But my headspace and my heart really is centered around feeling so grateful for the family that I'm building and the and I consider myself like first gen married, and I come from my family background is a little complex and unique, but I'm a product of parents that were never married, right? I never saw my parents together. I grew up in a single mother household. The typical struggle of children of a mother, single mom in the United States. Had all of the identities that many of our students have, right? First gen, low income, undocumented, all of those intersections. But when I think about my present, I never dreamed that I would be a homeowner. I never dreamed that I would be in a healthy relationship. I just never saw that for myself because I never saw that around me. I never saw that reflected in my home, in my community. The first healthy relationship partnership that I saw was in college. And I
Mm.
remember seeing a married couple disagree and have a conversation about that disagreement. And it blew my mind. And I was like, whoa, you can talk about things that are hard and not blow up. What an amazing thing. And I knew in that moment that's what I want. And so how do I get that is looking inward. What do I need to work on myself to be the best version for my partner, but also be the best version for myself? Like, I used to struggle with so many things, even at the beginning of my relationship with my spouse. Like, there are so many things that I had to unlearn about what it's like to be in a healthy relationship, that took me time and tears and prayers and so many things. And I am so grateful that I didn't run away from it, that I confronted it and I went through it. And then now I feel like our communication is so strong, right? Like, we can disagree and we can have fun as we're doing it. Like, humor is a big part of my relationship with my spouse. His name is Frank. He's amazing. And yeah, anytime we're like in disagreement, like later on we're laughing about it, or we take a break and then we just move forward and onward. And I just love that we can do that for each other. And now that we're parents, new first time parents, nobody has time to be to be petty, right? Like, we're exhausted, we're tired. Let's just get over it and it's fine. And I love the life that I have. And like I said, I never dreamed that I would have this. I never thought that I was always surviving. And now I feel like I'm finally thriving. And like the prayers that I made 15 years ago are finally like cumpliéndose. I'm seeing them come to fruition. And I'm just so grateful because this is a season where I was like, I, I know I earned this because I've worked so hard to be where I'm at, but I'm also like, I just want to be present to this gift, which is my daughter. Like, she is my whole world right now, and she's a miracle baby. Yeah, she was born 2 months early. We had a very traumatic birth experience, and any day that I have with her is just such a gift from God, because I see her and I just see, I'm like, I want to give her everything that I didn't have.
Mm-hmm. And when you, so two things. One, when first, thank you for sharing that, because that was like beautiful. And it's interesting because you're not the first person in the past like month that I've talked to, that I think maybe because I'm, you know, in this space now where I'm talking about, oh, I started this Cultura Combos and talked
Yeah.
to a few friends. I've had a few friends now that share how their spouse was such a big accomplishment in their eyes because they didn't grow up seeing that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I grew up with both of my parents together, and obviously, not that it's been like a, you know, perfect ride. However, it's interesting too because I'm the third one born, right? So I was the first one
Yeah.
born here. And
Mm.
whatever the relationship with my parents has shifted over the years. So by the time I was born, it was like a very different story than whatever my brothers remember, you know? So that's
Mm-hmm.
another
Yeah.
thing that's been interesting too for me. Our parents are kind of that first example we have, right? Whether it's
Mm-hmm.
quote
Good or
unquote
bad.
good, bad, not there. So I want to know, like, one, how old were you when you saw that couple, and then it shifted that to you to say, I need to look inward? Because I feel like I would have been like, I just don't know that I had that maturity in my college years, like early college, to be like, I'm
Yeah.
going to look inward.
Yeah. Well, at that time, so I was around 19 when I met this couple, and they were staff members, and it was just a really wonderful thing to see professional folks and engaging with students. And at that point, I was in a relationship with like a high school boyfriend. And that was a really unhealthy relationship. And I was trying to escape this relationship and figuring it out. How do I get out of this cycle of toxicity that I was a part of? And I've seen this so much in our communities where, like, you see couples that you know are clearly not thriving, and yet they're stuck to each other for a very long time, and like they have kids, and then, right, like, you see the whole drama play out in our community. And I just felt like, well, I'm gonna be in this, I'm gonna be stuck to him forever. Like, I don't know how to get out of this relationship. And I credit so much strength to my spiritual journey, because it was at that time where I went to college. I joined a Latino Christian faith group, and I really like grabbed onto my faith, and that gave me empowerment that I needed within me to say I deserved better. Like, I am worthy of love, right? And
Mm.
this is not from God. But when it comes to like turning inward, is I broke off that relationship by the end of freshman year, first year in college. I went on a like spiritual journey retreat, to like really like find myself and like figure out like how do I honor my dignity, my respect, all of my love, my self love. And then I was single for 3 years. In those 3 years, literally, like, resource after resource of like healing space after healing space, reconciling my identity as a undocumented student, trying to honor my mom, as advocating for immigrant rights, advocating for labor rights, like really going into both social justice spaces, but also like, cultivating like friendships with amigas and like community members, and just like regaining my self-confidence. I was a very my self-esteem was really low when I left that relationship, and so it was a moment of reclaiming self. And I even told someone, I was like, I'm going to be single for like 8 years. I want to work on myself. I want to love myself. You want to, there's now there's a word for it in Spanish. There's like, I remember La Magia del Caos had like a whole episode on when you take a pause from relationships to work on yourself.
Oh, I need to look into
There's
it.
a word, I got to come back to it, but
Yeah. But yeah, I
um
love La Magia del Caos. I feel like I'm
intent.
gonna meet Aislinn one day. We're gonna.
Yes, but it was an intentional time to just literally boycott relationships and work on myself. And that's what I was doing. I was like, I don't want anything to do with like potential partners. I just want to focus on my career, focus on myself, focus on God, focus on my family, giving back. And then eventually on my journey, like my husband Frank, we were both students at our undergrad. He was 2 years older. He took an interest in me and it scared me. I was like, I'm not ready. Like, I don't know what he was like throwing me signs, and I was a no nonsense person. I was like, wait. What do you want? Like, like I was not a chill person about it. I was like, I was like, we have to have a meeting and we have to discuss what is it that you want, because I don't like these signs that you're throwing at me. And so then he had to confess, and he's like, I like you. I want to get to know you. Are you interested? At that point, I was already admitted to go to Harvard Divinity School. So I was going to move from California to Massachusetts. And I was like, I'm not sure. Like, this is not going to work. He's based in California. He was actually going to Cal State Long Beach. He's from the LA area. And he told me, he's like, I am mobile. I can overcome obstacles. Like, he told me all of those things. And I was like, oh, okay. And I didn't believe him. I was like, this is a guy who just says things, like, I don't trust the way I grew up is I don't trust man's word. Like, the word
Mm.
of a man doesn't mean anything until actions follow through with that. It's just how I grew up. It's just, I never saw that. And I was like, no, he's just saying that. We kept going on dates. We eventually like made it official. We moved to Berkeley, and he stayed in Davis with his brother, and he visited me every day in the summer, and we fell in love in Berkeley. And every single day he was studying for the GRE, and then he would drive to visit me, and then we would go on a date after I got off of work in Berkeley. And I just saw him do the things he said he was going to do. Like, he's like, I'm going to start for GRE. I'm going to take the GRE. I'm going to apply to transfer to Boston University. And I was like, he's not going to do this. Like, it's too much work. He loved Long Beach. He did not want to leave that beautiful space that he had created.
Wait, did
And
you grow up in Long Beach or just
no,
went to
he
just in Long
he
Beach?
just went.
Oh,
He
yeah,
grew up
yeah.
in the LA area, Southwest.
Yeah.
And literally everything he said he was going to do, he was doing it. And then 4 months later, he had transferred to Boston University, moved over to the East Coast to continue to date me. Like, it wasn't even like we weren't engaged. We weren't, and people were like, you're crazy. What are you doing? What if you don't work out? You're moving for a girl. That's loco, And he's like very determined. He's like, no, I know she's it. Like, she's the one. And I even him saying those things, I was like, there is a sense of me of like, oh, why? What does he see in me that I don't even see in
Mm.
myself? And I think the whole journey has been about, someone can tell you you're amazing, you're beautiful, you're this, you're if you keep asking that person, why are you with me? And you're insecure about it, you have to look inward and say, like, now I don't need him to say, why are you with me? Right? Like, I know what I bring to our relationship. I know who I am. I know my worth. But back then I was like very, very much questioning, like, is this person going to stay? Are they just here for a little bit? Like, there's just so much unlearning of how I saw people operate in my family and in my community, that I was like, I couldn't even believe that I was in a good relationship for a long time.
Yeah.
And so over time, and I think it was his gentleness and his persistence. And obviously, like, I also did things to also hold space for him. Like, in our relationship, we've held each other in the ways that we both needed. And like, he brings strengths that I, may not have, and then vice versa. And so I think it's been just a beautiful journey of, as I was falling in love with him, I was also understanding why he was attracted, like, why he liked me. And it wasn't a matter of I needed to be told reassurance. It was a matter of like standing in my confidence in my relationship and knowing who
Yeah.
I am. And I love that I'm in this place, because it felt really uncomfortable to constantly be questioning that relationship when I didn't need to, and it was just something that I was bringing from my past. And
Yeah.
so this whole journey has been a matter of self-reflecting. I gravitate to so many resources, and so anything that I can learn about self-awareness, autoconocimiento in Spanish, I just love it, and I just want to learn it so that I can keep getting that inner strength.
Yeah, I love that. And that's exactly kind of when I had talked to you about like, oh, I could see our conversation going so many ways because
Mm-hmm.
of what I know about you, the things we've talked about, the things you've shared. And it was like, in this season, you were like, I really can talk about healing and joy and
Yeah,
like my
yeah,
journey. And it was like, yeah, of course you can. And I think that's like something that could be really like valuable and beautiful. Cause I'm telling you, I also feel like when I reflect on my high school years and early college years, I was like, when it came to men, like, or boys, I guess, I could think of my first journal. I think I started my first journal like in ninth grade. I was like 14, 15.
I did too. I was 15. I've been
Yeah.
journaling
Okay.
ever
What did
since
you write
then.
about? Because I feel like all I wrote about was like boys. And I think I don't remember what I must have heard it somewhere. I don't know how, but I started writing, and
Right.
it was really just that. And I feel you. I think that like I sometimes I try to go back to like and I like why was I in relationships that were
Mm-hmm.
not healthy
Harm.
for me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In in my teen years, and I think it was that self-worth.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it last time, like I don't think I ever talked to my mom about any of my boyfriends because I don't think I could even have boyfriends. Well, I know I
Yeah.
couldn't, so it was like you keep it a secret. And then but anyway, I love how like that is part of what started, not started, but that is part of that journey you've been on to, because even as you speak, in my mind, I'm like when you said something like, oh, he was seeing something in me that I didn't even see in myself. I feel like that applies to so many aspects of our life, even outside of relationships. Because I feel like that
Yeah.
has happened to me, like in the workplace or even with friends, where I've had like professors or people that share something about me, and I'm like, and it's almost like, oh wow, like
Yeah.
I didn't even see that in myself, like, and it could come from different places, but when we question it, to your point, then I feel like that is a little bit of a hint. Like if somebody's telling you how beautiful you are or how dope you are and you don't believe it,
Right.
then it's like, okay, I need to do some inner work to
Yeah.
believe that for myself too,
Yeah.
um so thanks
Well,
for
on
sharing that.
I was gonna say on that note, as folks, as moms who are raising daughters, like I have thought so much about what it looks like to instill this inner voice in Aitana, like desde chiquita, to trust her inner voice more than the external critique, right? Because I think so many women are socialized to depend on the opinions of others to then see themselves reflected on what people think of them. And even things as little as like, obviously, like we tell our baby girls like que hermosa se ve, or like, baby girl, you look so beautiful. Like literally every day I'm like the best look, cutest little thing in the world, right?
Yeah.
But when she's a little older and she asked me, and I've talked to Frank about it, when she asked us like mommy, like como me veo, or like how do I look, I want to practice having us say, mi amor, how do you think you look? Like,
Mm.
how do you see yourself, mi vida? And then her saying, like, I look good, like, I feel good, me veo chula, like, amazing. Then it's like, we then validate, mi amor, si te ves hermosísima, right? But really, like, having that first response be from her, and I think it's just so little, but I think it can make such a difference where like she don't have to depend on anyone to tell her who she
Yeah.
is, how she looks, what she's worth, what she brings. And it's cultivating that voice as a chiquita as much as we can to protect her from the external world, which is definitely going to tell her so much. One of the things I love about my husband is he is so thick skinned. You know, like he's a guy who went through so much social bullying growing up in LA, being a brown Latino who loved to study, like being a nerd in those, in our schooling system in LA, and he was made fun a lot. And so he has
Pero
such
de qué le
thick,
hacían burla? Like just
porque
because.
porque le gustaba estudiar, because he was quiet and he was studious, and he didn't, maybe he didn't have like the social swag that some of his peers had, pero it was just like so much of that, like, like peer pressure. And nowadays he's the person who is the most self-confident. Like I love how self-confident he is, because he had to learn how to cultivate, like, everybody's telling me all these things, but I need to know who I am and what I bring. And like, to the point where, like, sometimes I'll give him my feedback, like, hey babe, no me gusta, you're wearing a shirt, I don't know if I really like it. He's like, I don't care. I love it. I love it. He'll keep wearing that shirt. Like, and it's like, it's an amazing thing for him to be like, he stands by authenticity. Like, he
I
is the
love
most
that.
authentic version of himself, and he will, no matter what people say, he will show up in a space, he will be himself, and he's not going to be swayed by people's opinions, or even by the common this, like, um what is it called, like, the when people go with the flow because everybody's doing the same thing.
Yeah, no, I
he's
agree.
he's
The
a
like the
counter
trend
he's
or
a
what's like socially accepted. And
right, so
I do think and that's another like, part of why I created this space and I was excited to have conversations like these about kind of identity or cultura and things like that. It's like the reframing that goes in this journey. And one thing I was thinking about, recently is like I don't know if it was you throwing over voice memos or another friend, but I was just
mm,
saying how like because we're trying to, it's like almost embrace the things that serve us, that we love, that we want to maintain and pass on, but also like let go and reframe other things, not just of our
yeah,
culture, but in society. It's almost like hard sometimes because you're questioning a lot of things and then you're going quote
against the
unquote
norm.
against what society identifies as the norm. So
Mm-hmm.
even to your point, as you say, like, yeah, like he was the kid that was studying and people in school, it's like, oh, that's not cool, you know what I mean?
You're right.
And it's kind of like now to see him on the other side is nice, where he's like, well, girl, I don't care if you don't like what I'm wearing. I'm sure it's like bittersweet for you because it's like, dang, quiero que te cambies la camisa, but
Right,
I'm also
no.
inspired that you're like,
Yeah, exactly.
um
I want to be like that. Like, I
yeah.
don't want to care.
Yeah, it is interesting kind of watching our journeys, just
Mm-hmm.
kind of how we, I guess, even to your point about like la hacían burla in LA, me and my friends were like, dude, is that why we're becoming confident in our 30s? Because of all the carrilla we were
Yeah, yeah,
given. Like, dude, some people think of this stuff.
yeah.
I laugh about it now, but I literally was called Chewbacca because I had a hairy back. That's what my
I
sibling
know.
said.
Es
So
que,
for a
es
long time, no
que,
me quería like poner like halter tops, as a
right.
teen, and it's kind of like now I laugh about it, but it's also like no, and I do think that was one of my things that I wanted to ask you, like
Mm-hmm.
now that you have a daughter and you basically answered it, it's like what what is something that you're trying to reframe so that
Mm-hmm.
she believes,
Yeah,
about
yeah,
herself? Because I like how you put it where it's like you're basically asking her, and this therapist I was working with explained that to me too, like we're basically helping them develop
right.
that sense of self in their early years, right? Because we're the ones with them, talking to them, and mainly the mom, even though the dad is also extremely important. It's like the bond is different, but in your teen years is when you start kind of really questioning and then developing your sense of self. So if you didn't
Yeah,
really have someone to guide you and validate you and make and help you believe that you are worthy, you do deserve love, you are beautiful, then it creates a lot of
yeah.
insecurities or problems in the future. So like other than like how you said like asking her so she can kind of voice it for herself, like have you thought about like what is something you would want to reframe for her that maybe you grew up and you're like, I need to let go of that and reframe that for my daughter as she grows up?
Absolutely. So many things. So many things. I mean, even just starting with Aitana, when she was like around 3 months, she found her screaming voice. And it was so cute from going from like just crying to like literally screaming because she needed things to be done now. And so, and like I was so proud of that voice because then, but like obviously, like people around are like, I know, like, we need to suppress that voice. And like, like, I think there were like family members would say, ay, que gritona, or like, ay, que enojona, like things like
Like
labeling
labeled right
her
away.
right away, literally 3 months old, right? She is reclaiming her voice, or she found her voice. And the first thing we do is like try to put a negative label on it, right? And so
Hmm.
my instinct as a mama who is like unlearning so much and learning about what it means to validate children's emotions and give them the space to feel and to process, because I think we grew up very suppressed. ¿Por qué te enojas? Why are you crying? Like it was all the time. It's like we could not have any negative emotions. We are not allowed to, even now as
No,
adults.
no reniegues is like a
No
big one that
reniegues.
I'm like,
No. So much cultural suppression of our voice, and specifically negative emotions. And even now, growing, yes, as adults, if we go through a bad day at work, or like, si algo te pasó and you're really struggling with it and you're really upset or you're grieving something, don't worry about it. Like, there's a silver lining, or they're trying to reframe it for you in a positive way. No, pero eso es nada because I went through this thing that was like 10 times worse, right? It's like, again, it's always like, you are not allowed to feel what you feel. And so, like, from the moment she started her voice, I would tell my family, like, no, like, it's not that she's angry or like a gritona, it's that she is like empowered, or like she has found her voice. And like, what a beautiful thing that like she can use her voice to communicate her needs. And that is, I just validate and affirm that. And like, and she's screaming at me, Mama, qué bonito, cuéntame, ¿qué necesitas? She's screaming at me, I love it, me gusta, me encanta que estás gritando. Okay, mi amor, what do you need, right? Like, I'm like literally that person. And my husband's like with the baby screaming, he's like, I don't know how to make her stop. And I'm like, it's not about making her stop. It's about being in tune with what she needs and making
yeah.
sure that she feels your presence and your comfort and your validation. And I think that is something that I wish I had, right? I wish we had the ability to sit with our parents. And I think so much of why we didn't go to our parents to ask for advice was because whenever we had tough things happening, it was just always like una regañada, or like a, pero why are you doing this? Like, I think there wasn't a lot of empathy in my household, right? There
Mhm.
wasn't even a lot of tools to ask you questions about what you're going through, right? Like, I feel like our parents knew sometimes we were struggling. I know something's off, but they didn't know how to get us out of our shell, or ask us, or sit us down and say, hey, like, aquí estoy, what is it that you need? Like, I think there was just so much like, oh, they're fine. I think maybe it's like in Latin America, when you're 12, they see you as an adult. You're like 12, you're independent. Ya
Pues,
te puedes cuidar.
yeah.
Ya te puedes cuidar. And I think we were literally trained to be like, desde los 12 años, we're literally trained to be on our own. Like, or older siblings can tell you what to do. I don't have time for you, you know?
Yeah,
So,
I feel like the other thing I thought about is like sometimes so for me, like I met my grandma and then I
hmm,
met my great grandma from my mom's side. I didn't meet my great grandma from my dad's side.
yeah,
And sometimes I feel like the more I learned about their story, it was
yeah,
almost like, yeah, like it's almost like that's why it's so huge what we're able to do. And then obviously thanks to our parents, to our ancestors, that we're now in a
yeah,
space where we're almost like shaping this new life and creating these things. And like that's why they say, breaking cycles or pivoting and stuff.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
sometimes I'm like, my mom tells me like how her mom was like super strict,
yeah,
and like y se enojaba mucho and like this and that. And it's crazy because I met my grandma obviously when she was a lot elder. So I'm like, yo, my grandma looked chill. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but it's
Yeah.
almost like, yeah, like you met her in her chill years.
Right.
But like the way she raised us was very different. So it makes me think too, like, yeah, I don't know that they ever sat down and said, talk to me about how you're feeling. I mean,
Mm,
my grandma, I feel like, she passed away a few years ago, but I always think like now that I'm older, I'm like, I could just tell she held on to so many emotions.
mm,
But to your point, I do think like even changing that to say, you know what, like I hear you, talk to me. That's only going to continue like as she gets older and then like she starts talking to you,
yeah.
like for you to be able to create that space. It's so interesting como luego les ponen como, oh,
Luego, luego.
salió corajuda, oh, salió, enojona. And then in my family,
Right.
they apparently like like, you know how, I don't know if your family does this where it'd be like, oh, los Torres or los whatever, así son. Ya
Mm,
somos gritones, así somos corajudos. And I'm kind of like, no, we
yeah.
can change that. You know what I mean? Like, we don't
Mm,
have to just go by the last name and like that
yeah.
is it. Like, I'm
La
like, we have
herencia
the power to
Torres.
change
Yeah. Breaking
that.
those herencias.
Yeah, that's true. So, okay, so I want to go back a little bit, and I
Mm,
love how it kind of went into this like relationship thing because I think it, like I said, some of this what we were talking and goes into a lot of things and like goes into different spaces. I want you to kind of go back, and I'm always interested in this question because
mm,
when I think about, for example, so I went to Long Beach City College, and
mm-hmm.
then I applied to Long Beach and Dominguez Hills, and then I ended up going to Dominguez Hills because one of my professors was like, they have a great like human services program there, which is like social work basically. But anyway, I say that when I was when I chose my major, girl, it was really just like, oh, my sister was going to school too, and
Mm-hmm.
she's doing social work, and it feels broad, and I want to help people. And I remember
Yeah.
taking a Myers Briggs test, and then I remember like teacher was there, dance was there, but I was like, dance. My dad was like, that's not really a career.
Right.
And so anyway, I chose like human services because it was like, oh, these
Yeah.
are broad. I didn't really know what I was doing, and even how I decided to go to Long Beach City College. Like I always knew I wanted to go to school because I guess I heard my parents so much talk about education, education, education. But literally, it was like I talked to my counselor like really late, and he was like,
Mm,
oh, so he asked me my grades. He looked at my grades. They weren't all that. And then he was like, are you paying for school or your parents? And I'm like, me. And he's like, okay, well, I would recommend City College, which in
mm,
hindsight, I'm glad I did do that. But it makes me realize that everything was just going with the flow. Like I didn't really put a lot of thought. So I'm always inspired one by people who end up going straight into a 4 year because I'd be like, well, like how did you even know? Because I was like clearly not in the loop of applications and things like that. And then two, like how did you choose your degrees?
yeah. That's a great question. I'll start with first. I came to this country when I was 6 years old, and I was in ESL classes until sixth grade. And so once I learned the language, my grades went from like D's and F's to like A's and B's. And then ever since then, just was on that trajectory of like college bound. Like I remember when I was in seventh grade, avid, and like folks talking about um, being college ready and all of those things. I think the thing that was hard for me and my brother was that we knew we were undocumented very early on, like desde que llegamos. And so while everybody was talking about like apply to the UCs, the CSUs, the CCs, because we're from California, we knew that like we weren't going to get any financial aid. Like that was the law back then when I was growing up. And so my brother did some research. He's older than me, and he said, Diana, like if one of us, if we get into a private school we can get a full ride scholarship. So then that became the goal. It was like my brother created this plan for us. He says like, be the best student ever possible, get involved with all these extracurriculars, and like apply to all these Ivy Leagues and others.
Wait,
And
how old was your
so
brother when he did this plan?
he was like a first year in high school. He was like 14. Like he met with the college counselor in high school, and he was like, I'm undocumented, I want to go to college, what can I do? And the counselor was like, oh, you can't do anything. And so then he refused to believe that.
Believe
He was
that.
like, and he did his own research, and like internet had just come out. We went from like the CDs of internet to like the internet had just come out. So he went to the library, he did his own research. I owe so much to my older brother, and he was only a year older. Pero ever since then, like even in middle school, once we both learned the language, we were competing. Him and I would compete for the best grades. Like entre nosotros. My mom literally never had to say, hicieron la tarea, what do you need from me? Nunca nos ayudó. Like literally was like, my brother and I just had an instinct to just do good. And I think it was from seeing our mom, how hard she worked, right? Like this is a woman who worked multiple jobs, who didn't sleep. We made her lunch. She was back and forth. We barely saw her. The TV raised us, like all of that trajectory. And so then we saw how hard it was for her. And we were like, we don't want to add issues onto her. So we want to be the best we can in school. And we just used it as like healthy competition. Like he would get an A, I would get an A plus. Like it was like, and it was the same class. It was just I was a year behind him, so I would take all of the classes after him. Anyways, so in middle school we both graduated with all these awards, and then we went to high school, and then it was like my brother was like, this is where it's real. He's like, forget middle school. He's like, that was like practice. He's like, this is where it gets real. And we moved a lot. Like my mom would move apartments because le subían la renta. So then she's like, I don't want to pay that. And so we would move a lot. And we would switch school districts so much that my brother was like, Mom, we can't move anymore because we're in high school and this is real now. And obviously she's like, what are you talking about? He's like, we're trying to go to college. And she had no idea.
Like, you're
So
messing
then
with my plan, Mom. I'm on a
yeah,
mission.
he's on a mission. And he basically got my mom to go to the school district. She moved again because she was like, I don't care, this kid's like, I gotta find affordable housing, right? And so we moved to a garage in some other city. And then he basically said, I'm gonna petition for us to stay within the same school district, even though my mom decided to move us again. He took her, made her sign petition, and we stayed in the same school district. And then we were able to go to our high school for like the 4 years, which I think makes a huge difference because when you move around, there's transition. And in high school, like I said, like nobody told us, oh, do you want to go to college? It was literally like this mission that my older sibling had, and him making me believe it, and I'm me going with it. And then sometimes he would tell me like, when I was a junior in high school and I was taking like 4 AP classes, he was like, or I think I took 3. He was like, you need to take 4. And so he would push me, and then I would be like, I think I know what I'm doing. And then he would tell me, no, you got to do this. Like he was a typical older brother telling me what to do, and I was that little sister who was resisting his guidance and his mentorship. But I was resisting because I saw that like when he took 4 APs and like one of them was really hard, he was struggling with the other ones, and I was like, I'm gonna just take 3. Or maybe he took 5, and I was like, I'm gonna take 4. I don't remember the exact. I think it was 5. He wanted me to take 5, and I was like, I'm gonna take 4. And so then he would be like, oh, why don't you listen to me? And I'm like, because I'm learning from your mistakes. And so at the end, I credit so much to him, but he applied to so many private schools. He got waitlisted at Columbia University. He didn't get it accepted. He got into all these amazing UCs, including UCLA. He ended up going to UCLA, but again, I think it was that bittersweetness where like it's a great school, pero no financial aid, no housing, no dining. It was like he was in survival mode, and he was fundraising for his tuition. He was working on the side. He was hustling. He joined the immigrant rights movement, and then that also inspired me to like say, okay, when we go to college, we become activists. Like I just thought you go to college, you become an activist because I saw my brother do that.
Yeah.
So I ended up applying to all these privates when it was my turn, all these privates. And I only got into one. I applied to 10 schools, and I got into one. I got into all of the UCs that I applied to, but it was at the time where like top 4% would automatically get into the UCs. And so I was already kind of like, well, I know I'm going to get into these, but I wanted to get a full ride scholarship the way my brother made this plan. It's like el plan de Aslan, right? But like for us,
Yeah.
el plan de los Ortiz, like that was our whole thing. And I got one rejection after the other. It was kind of like, okay, I'm gonna be in the same place as my brother, where like, you got one rejection after the other. And at that moment it was like, are they rejecting us just because we're undocumented? Like, do they just not want to deal with us because we were both high achieving students, we were both doing, all the things that you were supposed to do. And then when I got my one admission to Pomona College, he opened it for me. I was in church. I was in like a dance practice because I was in that dance ministry. And he opened the packet. He called me with my mom, and he was like, "Diana, you got in. You did it. You did it." It was so beautiful, and I just remember he was jumping with joy. And then my mom was like, ¿Qué pasó? ¿Qué pasó? And he was like, Diana lo hizo. She got into a university. And and I think it was such a big moment for our family, because he was like, we don't have to worry about Diana. Like, she's gonna make it. And he was like, and the financial aid package, he already had gotten it, or like he was like, it's coming. It was a big packet. It was when you didn't get an email, you got the big packet. So he was like, you're gonna get a full ride. He's like, any at that moment, if your family income was less than $30,000, you would get a full ride, and ours was less than that. And so, and tuition was $60,000 for this school. And so it was just one of those things where I think it was the moment where I made my brother proud, and like the plan that he wasn't able to fulfill for himself, like I was able to fulfill it for us. And it literally changed my life. Like, it was worth it, all of the sacrifice. Because when you're a, like, I remember my mom never drove me to a practice. I was in multiple sports. I biked to those sports. I Everything that I did and that my brother and I did, we did it on our own. We stayed late. We woke up early. We, when you had bad school teachers in high school, there were some bad teachers. We were both like, I'm not going to let this teacher give me a bad grade. I'm going to read the textbook on my own. And that's what we would do. We would read the textbook on our own, and we would learn the things that weren't taught to us to get that grade and do the extra credit. And like, it was just a lot of sacrifices. There wasn't a summer that we didn't take classes to catch up or to get ahead. And I think it was like that moment where like, oh, this was all worth it. Like, all of the work that we put into making this happen. And again, I think it just came from, I come from very hardworking parents, both my mom and my dad. And again, this motivation for my brother to just make, and I think we have to work 10 times harder because we're immigrants. Like, we're not messing around. We're not that second gen student who's like, my parents, yeah, I could do whatever. No, we were like, we're immigrants. We keep our head down, we stay quiet, and we just do the work. And that's how we operated. And I applied with an engineering major. I was like, oh, I'm gonna be an engineer, because I was taking AP calculus and AP physics. And I was like, I think I like it. I was good at math and all this stuff. My physics class, though, was really, really terrible. And I had to read the textbook because he wasn't a great teacher. And I applied with that. And then I took a math placement exam when I got to Pomona College, and I placed lower than I thought. And I was like, whoa. And because college math is just like, you think you're good in high school, and then you get to college and you're like, oh no. Some of my peers have taken BC calculus, or like they've gone to AP stat, whatever.
Yeah.
And I was not on par with like my peers. And so I waited a semester to see what my friends would do, because my friends all took like the first math, the class that was recommended for first years to take around math. So they all took this math class, and I was like, I'll wait. I don't want to take it right now. And I saw my friends all drop like flies from that class. They were like, this is a hard class. I don't even. They were like all STEM majors, and half of them by the end first year were like, I'm no longer pre-med. I'm no longer this. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. We went to a really hard university, or undergrad. And so it was just like a matter of, I was learning. I think I used the same approach as my brothers. I was learning from my peers what mistakes they were making to then avoid them in my future. And in the meantime, I started taking social studies and like social humanities and all this other classes. And so I told myself, like, take all the classes. Someone gave me the advice, take all the classes that are interesting to you, and then decide at the end of first year which classes you enjoyed the most. And so I took sociology, politics, public policy. I took a religious studies class, history, and I think I took a psychology class too. And I remember I was like, the best classes were my Chicano studies classes, but also specifically my history classes. And at the end of first year, I declared history, and I never looked back. And ever since then, I was that student who was reading a book a week for class, because that's the history majors. They read so much and we write so much. And I think I just knew. I was like, I don't know what career you're gonna have from history. I don't know. Like all I can think about is you could be a history teacher, right? Like
Yeah.
that's all we know. But I was like, I just know that I like this subject, and I minored in Chicano Latino studies, and I like those subjects. And then I was like, forget engineering. I'm not gonna. But I never thought I would be a history or Latino studies, because growing up I hated English. I hated the language. I struggled, right? So much of my struggle was because of the language. And so I was like, how is it that a student who hated reading, I didn't grow up with books. We didn't have a book in my house, just the Bible, right? And so then I remember I was like, how is it that all of a sudden now I'm like this studious person who reads so much? But and so it was a full circle moment where like I reconciled with the English language. I had to basically like accept the fact that like this language was in my life, because it was literally what I had to study with. And but I never thought, and even I had some history teachers, not the best ones, where like I remember I got a B on one of my essays, and I went to office hours and I asked the professor, it was a European history class, and I said, how can I get an A in my essay? Like, what can I do to like make my argument better? And he was an older white man. He was close to retiring, and he told me, he's like, I know it's really hard for you like to like write, I know you're like English is not your first language. So I mean, I can tell you what to do, but I'm not sure if you're going to be able to do it. And so he's like, but a B is a great grade, right? And like, granted, this is coming from someone who had never gotten a B in high school until like my senior year, when that physics professor teacher decided to give me a B plus,
So
and
you
I was
were
like,
like all
so
A?
yeah, mostly all A's. And so then when he told me, he's like, a B is great, I was like, I can't, like, my identity is in my school. And I left office hours. I like cried multiple days, and I was like, can't believe like he won't even try to give me insight into how to get an A, because he just assumed that I'm not a good writer because I'm a
Yeah.
secondhand English speaker. And so then I was like, okay, I'm gonna channel my brother's spirit, because my brother was always like, I will prove you wrong. Like, you tell me something, I will prove you wrong, right? Like that counselor, you're not going to college, I will prove you wrong. And so then I was like, okay, I started studying with a peer, another Latino from my class, European history. And like, I hated that class because he was just a horrible professor, and lecture didn't even engage in dialogue. Just, it was just so boring. And but a final exam was coming up, and I remember my friend and I, who are both in the Latino studies lounge study area, we stayed up literally all nighter studying for this European history test. Like, we went through all of the significant dates, all of the significant, like, key stakeholders for this for European history during this time period to that. He mapped it out. He had taken AP Euro in high school, so I was like, please let me know how you did it. And we just study, and then we ended our studies at 8 a.m. and then our exam was at 9 a.m. And so then both went into this exam. We're like, okay, Diosito, me encomiendo, put my hands, because school was really important to me.
Yeah.
And I think I just was like, okay, now that I'm in college, now I have to do good, because I don't know what the next step is, right? And so did my exam, turned it in. I was like, whatever I get, I hate this professor. I got an A minus in the exam, or I think I got an A in the exam. I don't know what I got, but it was an A or A minus, which meant that I got a B or B plus in the class. So I was like really proud, and I was like, oh, this pays off. When you put in the work, it pays off. But again, it was all of the sacrifice. And I
And
think
did you feel? Oh, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, I think what I realized was that I really did enjoy, like, I was willing, I didn't wanna switch majors because this was a history class that I had to take. But I was like, I am going to persevere, and I'm not going to let this professor like push me out of the major. Like, I'm going to be a history major. And I love what I studied. I love the professors who I'm studying with. And I'm so glad that I have that training, because anywhere that I can go, my first instinct is, what is the context? Like, show me the institutional documents. I would read that mission. I would read the past like archives, and then I will be brought up to speed where we are.
I want to pause for a moment. And many of you may have heard me talk about my first children's book, Two Homes, Dos Casas, and Dos Casas. You can purchase it at edithsuarez.com/books. I wanted to write something that would speak to children. And my goal and my vision is the stories that are going to happen between families when you finish reading the book, to be able to tell part of your story, parents to kids, and vice versa. So, this book is available as a bilingual version, so primarily English with sprinkles of Spanish throughout. And then this one is fully in Spanish, and they're both available on my website at edithsuarez.com. Don't forget to click subscribe and add yourself to our newsletter on our website so you can stay in touch.
That's awesome. I mean, you said so many things that resonate and I can relate to, and even though it's like different paths. And right. I mean, so one of the things that it makes me think of is like, I think a lot of us, because we do hear our parents talk about education so much, like you said something like, education was my identity. Or it was such a big part of your identity. I saw this like a video that where you had talked about like DACA, and you were doing like activism about DACA, and you said something like, you couldn't control your financial poverty, but you could control the number of A's you got.
Yeah.
Can you kind of like tell me more about that? Of like, okay, you have, in some ways, it's almost like your identity was so tied to your education, which in this case had you like hardcore. I'm a get this done. I'm gonna get that scholarship, which ultimately you've said in your case, you know, you have felt like is worth it. Yeah. But like, have you changed that, or is it still such a core part of your identity that you're happy with, or have you had to like reframe it?
I have had to reframe it, like even in the question that you asked. So let's start with your schooling and your career, right? Like my instinct wasn't, let's talk about it, right? And it's because I've unpacked this part of my life so much. In what you were sharing is like an advocacy video, right? So many high achieving undocumented students have been tapped with like, I want to hear your story. I want to bring empathy to the movement because I want to uplift like this high achieving student. And so I feel like I have been used for those means in that media consuming, and obviously for a good cause, which is to provide a pathway for citizenship for students like me, right? And those kind of things. But I also felt like we're more than what we produce. We're more than economic contributors. When you think about immigrants, we're always painted as hardworking, good family people, right? Like serve the community. And we're never really just honored for our humanity, right? And so I think it's something that I had to refrain in me of. I remember in college, I did have this. I used to push my body so much to produce those good grades, and even when I was sick. I remember one time I was sick. I had a cough or cold, and I still went to like a thing, academic thing, or like it's a school related activity. And one of my staff mentors told me, Diana, like, why'd you come? And I was like, oh, because I want to be here, because I want to show like I'm committed to this, whatever. And he was like, you don't have to come to this. You're sick. You should go to your dorm and like sleep and rest and recover. And I was like, what? Like you rest and you recover? Like, and I think we see our parents, they go to work sick, right?
Sick,
like
dude.
sick. Ay, me voy a tomar un
Oh my gosh,
ajito.
yeah. And not only that,
Imagine.
you know what I've realized? Not only like so yes, and I'm glad you said that because I feel like
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of one thing I've been trying to like, I'm in this space of like it's like almost like redefining so many things for myself. Like, okay, what does success look like for me? What do I want?
Right.
Like, because there were times where, I mean, my first anxiety attack, which at the time I didn't know was a panic attack, was in
Wow.
college.
Right.
And I remember I went straight to the ER and
Mm.
literally, girl, I was taking, so I was similar in the sense that I loved the way I describe human services is it's like a combination of sociology, psychology, and anthropology. That's kind of how
Right.
it is. And I always loved those subjects too.
Mm.
So literally, I had a class, abnormal psychology. At this point, I was at Cassie Dominguez. And I
Yeah.
remember my teacher, a professor, she was like, "How many of you have gotten an anxiety attack?" Maybe, and I like raised my hand. And in that class, you're learning about all these different like diagnoses and like the history of them, and like not
Wow.
everybody believes certain ones. Like for example, I remember like we talked about like how in Mexico you're like se te paró el muerto when you can't. Like you have you ever heard of that? No.
I haven't. No.
Okay, so it's basically like in abnormal psychology class, we talked about really what happens is like there's a disconnection between like your brain and your body. So when you wake up, it's like
Mm.
both kind of connect, but sometimes there's a delay. So you're up, pero no te puedes mover. So it's almost like
Wow.
no te puedes mover. So in Mexico, I would
Mm.
hear like my mom say like, "Oh, a so and so que hora se le paró el muerto," because they can't
Oh,
move. So
gotcha,
they believe
gotcha.
it's like a spirit or something that's not letting you move. In that class, for example, we talked about how like really more like the science behind it is not really que se te paró un muerto, but it's more of like it's just something that happens in our body. Anyway,
Total.
I said I was saying that because you were talking about um, have you had to reframe it, and I feel like for me, I do think how sometimes I would be in school and I'd be like, dang, and I was never the student that got all A's in high school or college. And in college I got really good grades, but my situation was different. I feel like I was a very great student, but once I was transferred into a predominantly white classroom, things
Mm.
changed a lot for me. I feel like that's
Mm.
when I was more of that student that was like, now I've reflected a lot because I worked in education for a while. It's almost like I wasn't the A student, but I wasn't the F student or the D student. So it's almost like you're the okay student.
Mm.
So es como que se te olvidan de ti. Porque
Mm.
teachers are going to focus on the high achieving and then they're going to focus on the ones failing. So when you
Right.
go through kind of the public school system and teachers in general, it's like those are kind of the two buckets that they're really kind of pay attention to. But
Right.
anyway, all that to say, like I think in school I would ask myself sometimes, especially like in grad school, I'd be up at like 3 in the morning doing homework, and I'd be like,
Right.
why am I doing this? Like,
Yeah.
is this healthy? Like, I don't think this is like, and I think
Yeah.
ultimately it goes back to it's kind of what I heard. Like, you want to
Pero
go to school, your parents didn't get the opportunity, and you are.
right.
So how are
Like
you going to miss this opportunity?
es un privilegio because I remember doing my all-nighter essays and like I was trying to finish my thesis in my undergrad and it was like 100 pages. And I remember like me dolía la espalda and I was like, oh, I'm tired. I don't want to write this anymore. I was like doing 30 pages at a time. And I remember like that voice saying like, ¿por qué te quejas? Like your mom works 12-hour shifts, right? And so it was that sense of like, I think we see it in our communities, the disembodiment of we sacrifice our bodies for the sake of work. And so our people just push through and then we deal with we go to a sobador later on or we take a remedio later on or we'll figure it out later, but right now we have to work, right? And so there I did have to unlearn that because I had to start listening to my body and to give my body like and to honor my body because I was like, oh, I'm just sitting here typing. Like, this is not manual labor compared to what my mom has to do, right? Like cleaning and doing all the things she has to do for people. And I felt so guilty just complaining about like having to do this essay. And I had to like basically reframe and say, and honor that like intellectual work is also really draining. And I don't
Mhm.
have to compare, right? Like for my mom, when she leaves work, work is done, she goes home, she does her cocina, like she does her errands, whatever. Our jobs, and we know like first gen professional, our jobs don't end when we leave our job. Like sometimes we have to check email, sometimes we have to do things off site, right? And so I had to relearn and unlearn that like I don't have to undermine my physical or because it's just intellectual labor. I have to
Yeah.
honor it, not over it, not over my mom's. I'm not gonna say like, oh, my work is hard, right? Like obviously, like
It's a
we know
separate, it's a different
it's
experience. I had a therapist one time that basically asked me, like, I was talking about how I felt guilty like at the beginning when I found out I was pregnant.
mm,
It's almost like como que todos, even though I was very open to this and I had already prayed on it, like I'm open to motherhood. When it happened, I was more like como que todos estaban más excited que yo. And I'm
right,
kind of like, wait, like I don't feel the way you're reacting. And one, but I didn't want to, but I didn't feel like, I mean, I wasn't sad. I was like, basically, I realized like one, I was still processing, and it was okay to
right,
express that. Oh, I'm actually still processing. And two, I was going through so many changes. I remember like I couldn't go to the gym anymore or go work out. And it was like I couldn't eat what I wanted to eat. And the therapist was like, and I kind of explained to her like how no me quería quejar, and I was making comparisons because, like I forgot what I told her, but she said, why do you feel expressing your frustration is complaining? And I was like,
mm-hmm,
that's a good point. And I think for me, it came from always hearing like no te quejes, or like almost like I grew up going to a lot of funerals, and it would be like,
mm,
como que we would praise the people que nunca renegó y que nunca se quejó.
yeah,
So I think she made me realize that, like, like,
that's the
mi
moral standard.
esposo sufrió tanto, pero nunca se quejó. And then
Yeah,
not only that, like, I grew up going to church, but I was
right,
never, my mom was very open to like, you can try different churches, this and that. But I always also still remember like people would bring up, and not that I even know all the Bible, como se dice, tales, not tales, but like stories.
yeah,
But it was
yeah,
like, I always remember them talking about Job, the one about
yeah,
Job, because I guess he didn't, no se quejó or something like that. You probably know it
yeah,
better than me.
yeah,
But it would like,
yeah,
so I do think there is this, to your point, and bringing it back to like going to work and, basically getting sick, right? To the point
yeah,
that we get sick. It's
yeah,
almost like, one, redefining that, like not allowing like our grades, for example, and like what you said last time, like our production to define who we are. I actually
yeah.
had a professor in grad school, which I love her, and she didn't give us a grade in the class. No, 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 I'm lying. She gave us all
Oh,
an A the first week of
oh,
class.
uh-huh,
And her whole idea was like, we've been so conditioned and we're part of this thing of like,
yeah,
it's the grade, and it takes us away from the learning sometimes. So she
yeah,
actually had us work through like creating our own syllabus for that class. Girl, people were tripping. It's almost like
yeah.
you want that, but when you get it, you don't really know what to do with it. Because you're like, wait a minute, like what? Like
You
what
don't
you
know how to
mean you already gave
function.
me the
Yeah,
A? What you mean you want me to create the rules? So, but it
right,
was, she made us write like why we got the A. Like, so you're already thinking of ahead. I am getting an A, and it's almost like a mini way of manifestation, because it allowed me to say why I was getting the A, even though it was the
right,
first week of class. And it was like, because I'm attentive, kind of the things that you said you were doing, but almost without being so attached to the grade. It's more like, because I want to learn, because I love
right.
this subject, because I want
Yeah,
to. So yeah, it's really interesting because the last thing I'll say is, my friend, we were talking about how, kind of how you said, like, you show up sick, and it's like you showed up to that event or
right.
that commitment,
Yeah.
and it's like, people don't want you to go places sick. You get me? It's like,
No,
quédate en
girl.
la casa. Like, nobody wants
Yeah.
to have your like freaking
Keep your
germs and
germs.
like tosiendo left
Yeah.
and right.
But that's the thing, we don't have that role modeling. We don't have self-care modeled to us from a young age. And so to your point, like grades were, and it like in some ways, this unrealistic idol, right? Like it was like my worth is attached to my outcome, which is this grade. And that is a very it's a very American thing. It's a very unhealthy thing. It's a very Western concept, right? That you are what you produce instead of you are who you are in relationship to, which is sort of the collectivist and people assessing you for how you show up. How do people experience you? And that should be based on, that should assess who you are, how you are. But it was very unhealthy, and so I had to unlearn that. And now my husband makes fun of me because he's like, you work to live. So I work to live, I don't live to work. He lives to work. And so like he's a workaholic. He is still a nerd. He loves what he does. He will just work until he has no headspace. And I have a very healthy relationship with my work. I have a very balanced lifestyle with it. And so I'm really, and also as a new mom, like things change, right? Like our capacity, like back before I became a mom, I used to work, maybe I used to stay late, 6 or 7 p.m., stayed at work and then come home because I'd rather get everything done and then come home and just unwind and like disconnect. I don't like to take things to work home. Sometimes you have to, but I just don't like doing it. And so I remember, I remember just like when I started going back to work after maternity leave and breast pumping in the middle of work, it was like a literal disruption of how I operated as a worker. Like I was that person who would go in for 4 hours, like, don't talk to me. I'll see you in 4 hours, and I will produce like something, like I'll finish a project, right? And that wasn't possible anymore. And it's not. Like I have to go to work, I have to do my 2 hours, and then I have to get ready to pump. And I can't ignore my body as a breastfeeding mama. Like it's one of those little things where your
Yeah.
body will remind you that you need
Oh
to
yeah,
take
that
milk
too.
out. It was like, and I remember sometimes I would be 30 minutes late to my pump session, and I would get a headache, or like I will start feeling my body will start just giving me signs of like, girl, you got to take my milk out. Otherwise, I'm going to make you sick.
And I
And
feel like that's
so,
part of the point. Sometimes I feel like God
yeah,
does these things in a way of
to
like,
teach us.
yeah, like slow down. Like
Right,
slow
right.
down. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm gonna start wrapping up because
Okay.
you and I can like talk for hours. Like I think you and I are both like within my friends that I voice memo, we're probably the longest voice memoers.
Yes,
Cause
like
like
4 or 5 minutes.
I think like sometimes like one time you sent me like a really long one and I sent you like a
Yeah.
really long one and I was gonna delete it because I was gonna be like, okay, this 10-minute thing is too much. And you're like, no girl, I'm like, estoy doblando ropa, tú
Uh-huh.
mándamelo.
I literally, it's an episode for me. I'm like, and
Oh,
sometimes
that's funny.
I wish I had a notebook to like respond to the 5.
I wanted to ask you two things. Like one, okay, you talked about like that inner work that you've done, right? In reflecting and reframing. What like tell me a few things of like what tools have you used? Is it like a therapist? Is it books? Is it like are you mixing it all up? Like what does it actually look like that has had
For me.
impact on you to help you in that process? Because I feel like it's a lifelong journey, right? So
Yeah,
what has helped you
right.
actually reframe things,
And
change
heal.
things, all that?
I think it has been a mix. So like I am a journaler since I was 15. And to the day, like ahorita que soy mamá, I don't have a lot of time to journal and sit with myself, but I crave it. I'm like, I need to journal. I need to write. I need to get things out of me. Um a big part of my healing journey has been my faith and my spirituality. And so a lot of it has been grounding in spiritual practices, lots of prayer, lots of community with other practitioners, and unpacking like, what does it look like to, especially when it comes to like justice and morality and you know, all these big topics. Like, I'm someone who has a lot of empathy and compassion for the world, so I'm always aching, my heart is always aching for something, and that's where my faith and my spirituality bring in and give me that hope. And so the other thing, I have gone to therapists, and thankfully the two times that I've been to therapy were very focused moments, one in undergrad, one in grad school, one after postpartum as well. And they were all like the ones in school were all Latina counselors that were provided by my universities. And so that was really helpful
Oh,
to
nice.
have specific like seasons of my life where I talked to Latinas. At those moments I was unpacking like immigration things, or like transitioning into the workforce and going from low income to middle class, and like kind of those type of things. I do a lot of peer to peer, like connecting to other like folks who are in similar life stages, kind of like you and other amigas that I have all across, where I'm like, I feel like I need to talk to someone who has been through this. I'll reach out to someone and connect and unpack that with them. um, I also listen to a lot of podcasts. I wish I was a reader. Like, as someone who read for school so much, like I think I read myself out of things where, like, unless I have a motivation, right, like a grade, unless I'm being graded, I'm not a reader. Like, I would rather hear an audiobook, or I would rather, and I think it comes back to, no sé si tú, but like as Latinas, we multitask so much, and I can't just be watching TV and not doing it. I gotta be folding. I gotta be arreglando. I gotta be feeding the baby, right? Like, I feel like we don't give ourselves
Like
permission
we don't, yeah, to just sit.
to just sit and chill. Like, when my husband talks to his family members, he'll sit and just talk, and I'm like, who does that? You know?
I do that now though with Amina. I do that a lot. I'm
I
just
think
watching
that's
her and on
great.
FaceTime.
And I love that. And I love that. But I think like I'm over here headphoning and washing dishes, right? Like, or like caminando, like getting a workout in, or lo que sea. And que we don't give ourselves permission to just be. So, anyways, that's something that I know about myself. Podcasting has been crucial. Like, wake up in the morning, get my makeup, get my hair, do listening to something that's life giving. And I'll send episodes to my friends or my family. And really, like, there's been some significant, I have podcasts, I think I've told you this, I have podcasts for every topic. Like,
Yeah,
you
you
give me a
did.
topic, I have my food podcast, my Latina, my social
I didn't
justice,
even know
my,
you were like so big on podcasts until I was doing like
yeah,
the research for my own, and I wanted to hear
yeah,
like what people like, what people don't like, and you were, I was like, oh girl, you on another
yeah,
level. I thought
I know.
you had like
I got, and
your
I'm always looking for new ones. But right now, La Magia del Caos, I think I went through a season where, like, for like 3 months in my postpartum. And I think it was really helpful in postpartum because she's a mom too, and she brings a lot of moms and
yeah, I
women.
love that.
And then I've been listening to Dr. Gabor Mate, who is a doctor, writer, author. He specializes in trauma healing, infant development. He's a infant Holocaust survivor, and like he just brings a lot of expertise in so many topics. And so he even talks about relationship between parents and adult child, which is where I'm at right
Mm.
now. Like, I am reconciling a lot of my upbringing, my parents, how they parented, how they didn't. And there's a lot of things that have been surfacing. And so, like, that's been the season that I'm in. It's like getting resources. I think I'm a very seasonal person. I even like, I'm seasonal, even how I dress, how my house, like, I'm a seasonal person. Like, I'm
Mm.
in, you know, Dia de los Muertos is coming up. I'm watching Wednesday, the show, because I am in that zone. I am like, I
And I
wanna.
honestly though, for me, I think I heard this in the Jay Shetty podcast because
Mm-hmm.
I
On
do
purpose.
love a lot. Yeah, on purpose. I really, that has really helped me like to look at life in seasons, not even just like you said, like kind of in
Yeah.
all aspects, but like in my life,
Right.
like just knowing, okay, I'm in this season. And sometimes if I think of like for a long time, I
Right.
almost had like this fear of dying that sometimes
Yeah.
kind of wants to come back. And I'm always like, if I have a long life, like there's gonna be different seasons. Like right now, I'm like even with Amina, I'm like, this is part of my season. Like slow
Yeah.
down. Even with this podcast, like I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do it every week. And then I'm like, no, it's a lot of work. Like, let me start once a month to be
Yes.
committed, to be consistent. So yeah, I love that. Actually, I just caught Marcel watching Wednesday, and yo soy bien miedosa, girl. Like, yo no puedo ver cosas that are scary. And for me, like, people laugh, but it's like even Harry Potter or Wednesday, I can't watch on my own. Like, it has to be during the day with somebody because my brain goes wild. So I'm like, so anyway, I caught him watching
I
it, and I'm
understand.
like, I was like, Marcel, are you serious? Like, we were supposed to wait for me, but it's all good. The last two things I want to ask you are like, one, like what is one thing about like your upbringing, your cultura that you're like embracing in this season? And then what's one thing that you're trying to really let go of? And those
Mm.
are the last two.
Embracing or trying to get rid of. Okay, I'm embracing reconnecting with ancestral wisdom. I've talked to you a little bit about what that means to me. So I grew up Christian and in a Latino, grew up going to Latino churches, Protestant, and growing up in that way, there is a lot of the theology that I grew up with is a theology of you don't question God. You don't doubt is not a thing in that spiritual background. And so anytime you have um it doesn't open yourself up to curiosity, right? And so it's like kind of, and it's also a very the way that I grew up, it was a very policing of people's bodies, people's expressions, and particularly women, right? Like some churches that I went to, no makeup, just dresses, long hair, right? Like the gender sort of controlling of women's bodies, and so it was a very restricted, sort of legalistic way of growing up. And there's a lot that I'm grateful for because I think what it gave me and what I'm grateful for is it gave me access to a faith tradition that I have since then deconstructed and constructed and try to figure out how does it apply to my lived experience. How does it give me hope in when it comes to injustice and things like that. But what I had to unlearn was the fact that, like, in that tradition, God is this smiteful person who's going to just castigarte all the time. Like, it's this fear-based fear-based theology of, like, you got to be ready for the coming of Jesus. Like, you got to always have repent, right? Like, it's this
Yeah,
always,
like por mi culpa, por mi gran
yeah,
culpa. I always think of that. Like, it's
you
always
got
like it's literally stemming from a sinner, at least growing up in the Catholic Church.
right,
And
right.
one thing, well, I'm gonna let you finish and then I'm gonna say one more thing
Yeah.
and then that's it.
But I think what I was gonna say is that, like, ancestral wisdom for me has looked like, what does it look like to reclaim some of our indigenous practices from Mexico, where we're both from? What does it look like to believe in the Holy Spirit, which I do, and also to believe in ancestors who might be trying to, like, give us wisdom, and opening myself. The way that I pray now looks very different. The way that I cleanse the room, like in how I grew up, you cleanse the room with holy oil, and you pray in the name of Jesus, and you bind, right, and you just, like, with authority and all that. I think now I'm like, I feel like very much trying to come back to those palo santo, salvia, like sage, and like those the medicines, right, from our cultura, and of, like, this is an instrument that can help me symbolically be in a room, cleanse a room, feel connected, feel welcome, good presence, welcome, creator. And the way that I talk about God now looks different, and I think I really align with specifically Latinas who are also decolonizing their faith and their religion, and also reclaiming those ancestral wisdom. But we have a lot of it in the, like, for example, in our remedios. Like, there is no Latino that I know who doesn't have a remedio, a go-to remedio. And how are we so open to remedios, but also not open to, like, the spirituality that we got from our indigenous ancestors, right?
Yeah.
We're so, oh, no, that's not God,
Como
right? But
esto
then
es
when it,
like de a veces hasta como del diablo. You know what I
right,
mean? It's like
yeah,
you, because I feel like even for me for a long time, and I'm still kind of in this journey of like it was. it almost felt weird, even though my mom was never like, we
Right.
never really talked about like Jesus only. It was more like God, right? And then, you know, learning how like in even in Mexico, like most, I think it's like a higher percentage of the population identifies as like Guadalupanos
Right.
than
Mm-hmm.
necessarily like, and I don't want to, I can't remember if it was specifically Mexico City, so I wouldn't want to lie, but definitely it was like then, let's say Católicos, right? But I felt kind of weird like at first when I was like kind of talking to my ancestors or like bringing in, porque it felt a little bit like growing up, you know, it kind of surfaces back like, oh no, solo a un Dios y es todo,
Right. Right.
and it's almost like if you do talk about that, like to your point, even stories I've heard, like stories friends have shared that I feel like are very powerful. And but if I tell certain tias, they'll be like, "Oh no, eso es del diablo," and I'm like,
Total.
actually, I took it as a very positive and beautiful experience, you know.
Total.
So
Total.
I feel you on that.
And I would say that one of the key pillars of ancestral wisdom is connection to nature. And I think in our colonization and our history of being colonized and the Western paradigm is trying to disconnect us to nature. Right. And so now in my practice, I pay attention to my surroundings. Like I am connecting to plantitas. If I want to walk, I am thanking plantitas. If I get a little bit of lavender, I'm like grateful for the lavender bush. I'll talk to it. I'm like, thank you for this gift. And then if I am outside and there's pajaritos, I'm like, talking to and I might look like a loquita, but I'm like literally that person who's like a butterfly lands near me and I'm Googling what does it mean when a yellow butterfly comes near you? Or like I was in a conference in Hawaii and I was pregnant. And I remember I had this beautiful encounter with a bee. And I was in the beach in like I don't remember what beach I was in, but there was a bee that kept coming, and maybe because my bathing suit was colorful or whatever.
No,
But there was
I
this,
got you. Like sometimes
you
we're
get
like,
me,
are
you
we
get me.
over analyzing it?
For
Like, oh,
me, I was
oh,
like,
this
this
is
whole
fine.
encounter, girl, I interpreted it como si fuera la más grande cosa. So there is a bee who kept coming, and I was like, okay, I am a little scared of bees, but I'm also like, okay, she's fine, she's not gonna hurt me. And I was just ushering her away, and I was like, are you trying to talk to me? And so then I googled, what does it mean? Like, what are the spiritual symbolism of bees? And girl, the significance was literally like birthing, like mothering. It was like this, like
I
whole,
mean,
and
I'm
I
that
was
person. I
pregnant,
would like be soaking up your story. Like, I don't think it was a
girl.
shirt. It was that. You know what I mean?
Yes, and the color yellow meant joy and life, and like I was pregnant, and not a lot of people knew I was pregnant. It was just my husband, and like I wasn't telling anybody, and I felt like Diosito was like trying to tell me like, hey, I'm sending you this little bee as a reminder that like you're bringing life into this world, and I'm with you. And I felt
Like, give
I
me the
felt
chills.
comforted, girl. This little bee transformed my whole trip. And that's the thing, that like growing up, we would have never opened ourselves to how is God speaking to me through nature, through a tree, through through an animal, through an insect. And I think that's something we're missing out. And so in my practice, I open myself to those things, and I like I'm in such a place in my faith, in my spirituality, where I'm no longer threatened by other people's belief. They, like I think growing up, we're always like, you gotta convert, you gotta stick to your faith, or you gotta protect what you. It was just this fear of other, and I feel so comfortable also because I went to divinity school and I was surrounded by all of the pluralistic religions of the world, and with colleagues who were from every walk in life. And I think it really taught me how to still be rooted in how I'm connected to the divine, but how to not be threatened by other people's connection to the divine, and how to still honor that beauty and that way that which they interpret, right, their sacred texts, whatever it is, their practices, how we can still learn from one another despite the ins and outs of our theology, right? And I think that's such a liberating place to be. And I think a lot of my recent journey that I'm grateful for is I was a part of a 9-month cohort for a spiritual direction school to become a spiritual director. And it was through an organization called Liberated Together, and it is mostly folks who are coming from the Christian or Catholic tradition who are unlearning and decolonizing and are now in a space where they're expanding their faith and their spirituality. And I think that's where I'm at. I'm in an expansive journey of reclaiming spirituality from my cultural background, and
Mhm.
also trying to mix it in with what I know of God through how I grew up. But a lot of how I grew up, I'm like, just whatever needs to be pruned and cut, I will just cut it. And I feel more whole and more connected because I've let go of like the lo que tienes y lo que no tienes que hacer, right? Like how we grew up is always like the good and the bad and it's always black or white and like this. And now I'm like, I can operate in the what actually is more in alignment with God is the mystery of creator, the mystery of the divine, and knowing that we all have different access to that mystery. So I love where I'm at, and I'm grateful for the people who are walking alongside me, who are also in that journey of reclaiming, reconnecting, but also like trying to stay rooted to who they are.
Yeah, I love that, and thank you for sharing that, because I also think like the other part of like even creating the space is like, as you know, whether we identify as like Latinos,
Right.
with your like, people's tribe back at home, your roots, indigenous, etc. It's almost like, yes, we have a lot of similarities, but our upbringings are also very different. And, we're just like not this one box. And even as you're talking, I'm like, it's interesting because my situation was very different with both of my parents. Like, my dad was always like, you just look at nature and there's a God. But he's more
Mm,
of like the doubter. My mom
mm,
is more like you said, como que I have to remind her sometimes, because my dad questions doesn't mean he's against or that he's
right.
necessarily a bad person. It's like there is this element of being okay with that. And I love how you said it. Like, it's almost like, I forgot how you put it, like being rooted in our practice and our beliefs and not being threatened by others, or always
Yes.
trying to convert, because it's not so black and white. So thank you, that was good. Well, I'm really excited. I feel like this conversation was awesome. And do you have any like final words or anything that I didn't ask that maybe you really want to share, and then we'll
Yeah,
say goodbye
I
there?
was I was gonna say like the way that I've reconciled, because so much of my faith was shaken when I went to both undergrad and grad, because specifically around social justice is like, how can I, as someone who is becoming increasingly aware of the struggles of so many folks in different identities, how can I still believe in a faith that is historically oppressive to those communities, right? And so my journey, and so much of my journey has been um, reclaiming my tradition from reading scripture from the lens of the marginalized people. And so it's called liberation theology, and like looking into that space. And because I was like, I can't be a Christian and still believe in the rights of, right, so many folks in my community, becoming queer affirming, becoming in solidarity with Palestine, right? Like, so becoming more aware of even the issues impacting Native and Indigenous people, Black Americans, and just like learning how each of our communities have either left our faith tradition because it has been a space of oppression and harm, or reclaimed it as a space of healing and wholeness. And I think for me, I've been in that tension where I recognize the harm of religion. I've studied it. I can walk you through the sins of the institution, right? Like we can go hand in hand, and every one of us has been harmed. But I can also, as a person who really does believe specifically in the teachings of Jesus, like in the ways in which I felt like he was radical and he was pushing back and he was right. Like I very much like have been on a journey of what does it look like to even reclaim a decolonized image of Jesus, and who was brown, who was a refugee, who was in the historical lands of Palestine, who was fleeing persecution, right? Like all of these ways in which I resonate with his story, and also resonate with other parts of the scriptures that I grew up with. But I think so much of it is rereading it from a different lens, because I think we were taught to read it from a Western colonial perspective. And so I've done that journey. I've taken the classes. There's a podcast that just came out from one of my friends from Divinity School who is a gay Catholic man, and he did an amazing podcast that I'm going to share with the world. Lo que no nos dijeron, podcast of reclaiming theology for LGBTQ. And so, anyways, it just for me, it's a really I love when people have decided I'm gonna stay and I'm gonna fight. And so
Right.
because I understand people are
A lot
like
of them like kind of
yeah,
get, yeah, like
distance,
disconnected. And I also feel like I
right,
always, when I have these conversations too with people or with my friends, it's like I always also separate religion from
yes, from
belief of
school, from work,
spirit, the divine, the most high,
right,
the gods, because religion is human made and
right,
humans are
right,
flawed, right? And it's like, yeah, I mean, we have a whole episode on religion,
right,
so I'm gonna have to bring you back, girl, so you can dive
yeah.
in.
And I could, but I think it comes down to like I believe that um the divine is can hold our questions more than we were even given credit to, right? Like don't question
Mm,
God, don't doubt. I feel like God is God and God can hold our questions. Like he is,
like,
like
come at me.
divine is so much more able to hold grief, questions, doubt, all of the things. And
Mm,
also I decided to not let people's behavior in church and religion damage my relationship with the
with
divine
the
and
divine.
creator. And so like that's all part of the reclaiming, but part of the unlearning. And I think it's ongoing. And I think for me it's like, how do I raise a child with this deconstructed faith, and how do I raise a liberated child who is compassionate towards human beings but also has a connection to the divine, in a way that doesn't damage, right? And I think it's a really hard place to be, because I don't know what it's like to raise that, because I didn't have that. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like second gen parenting, right? We are paving it as we go. We're trailblazing. We're going to figure it out as we go, because we don't have a roadmap. We don't have a book. We don't have something that explains our unique situation. And that's kind of where I'm at, even in that space. So I'm grateful for this podcast. I think it brought up a lot of things that I've been wrestling with. The other resource that I forgot to mention is I'm a big believer in self assessments. And so anything with like Myers-Briggs, right? Like there's a lot of things out there, the true colors, so many. But my favorite one has been the Enneagram. And I think it's been a big part of my healing journey, because it allowed me to understand behavior, motivation, and also personality all at once. And that's something that I recommend for folks who are looking for a tool and a resource, is getting an Enneagram coach or an assessment to figure out if it's a helpful tool for you.
I always feel like anything that boxes me in, I'm like, don't, I'm not in a
Mm-hmm.
box. Like, but then when I have taken certain ones, like Marcel had me do the disc, and
Mm.
I was like, dang, this thing, there's a lot of
Yes.
stuff that's real. Like that it
Yeah.
made me become aware of aspects of myself that I hadn't even been aware of. Like,
Yes.
and anyway, is the one you're talking about, because I shared this with a friend recently about the whole I'm hesitant, but this, and is that the one where it's almost like it's not just like a test and it's output, but you're kind of reading them and then you decide like where you fit based on
Yes.
awareness? Oh, okay.
Yes. It
So where do
is.
you find
It's
it?
yeah. I mean, there's so many tests out there,
No, the
at
one you
various.
said though, like, is that online?
Yes, it is. But there's so many Enneagram tests. So some are free, some
Oh,
are
I see.
paid, some are different levels of like economic commitment. But I will say that regardless of the exam, like once you read it, the way that I've been trained is, if it makes you upset, it's most likely resonates with who you are. Like there has to be something that you read that's like, dang it, I don't want to be this way, but like you see yourself and you're upset because like, how did you know? How did you read me? Who have you been talking to? Like who told you this? Like if it resonates
There's
like
a
that,
saying.
then
One of my therapists, she's I don't have her anymore, but she was great, and she said in Mexico, there's a saying: "Si te choca, te checa." So
yes,
it's like anything that's like,
exactamente.
I kind of don't like that person. Like it's a mirror. You gotta
Yeah,
dig it out a little
Yeah.
bit. So
We
okay,
gotta
so
we
read
gotta do a
through.
session for
That's
you.
a good
Yeah.
one. I'm gonna read
Yeah.
them and then like
Yeah.
have that
Yeah.
lens. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
No, it's gonna be great.
Well, thank you so much, Diana. This was great. I was like, yeah, we're gonna sit down for like an hour. It's clearly been longer than that, but I feel like everything's like really helpful. And yeah, I really enjoy it because I feel like the more I learn even of people, it's almost like you're getting
Yeah.
lessons for yourself and like things that you're kind of like, ooh, I want to take that. I want to process that. Like, let me try that. And then to your point, I think those are really hard questions that we're asking about life. So I feel like many of us are doing that, like doing our best to pave the way in a way that hopefully has like the best outcome for our children and our community and all that, So thank
Yes.
you. I really appreciate you, and I'm excited to put our video out there.